Hum bum bum ba hum hum ba hum.
If we are recording, like it really is. It's hard to record it with all this technology. It's surprisingly hard to record a podcast.
Oh wait, let's see what happens when I do this. Are you guys seeing something right now?
Oh, yeah.
I'm seeing an abstract piece of art.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Wow,
right.
Mickey. That could be in a museum, man. You should get Brittany to hook you up.
Yeah, I'm on my way, guys. I'm on my way. But yeah, so I guess theoretically, if we needed it, we could have a whiteboard where we all like draw things, or make collaborative art. You know.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay, but Nikki, can I wrangle us in? So we do think that we are. Well, I mean, yeah. Do you have any like interpretation of your art that you'd like to share with us there, Mickey?
I was thinking about chess.
Oh, because I thought it was a portrait of Jesus.
Yeah, it was. It's all of those things. It's everything but sex. It's like, whatever Oscar Wilde said or whatever.
I saw a abstract of a naked woman, so I don't know. Maybe that's where my head's at. I don't know. It's the glory of God and women's.
Ooh.
Okay, I don't know.
That's fancy there.
There's also some effects, guys. I don't know. I'm kind of ooh, I like this one.
I liked it more when Mickey was an Israelite. I like that better. That was cooler.
Oh, nice.
It's right after the Nakba. We're gonna rebuild a new thing.
Yeah, here, me and Scroggins are dealing with the real world. I'm on vacation, and Mickey's just off in La La Land.
Yeah, do you guys want to? We can go into Hellscape too. Hello, guys. It's Mickey the dog. I don't think
Mickey's a furry.
I never wanted to be a furry. Have I told you the story of a furry who tried to recruit me one time?
But you're a digital furry. That's like a more. Oh, okay. Now we're going like Avatar.
Oh, I guess. Well, I'm like Navi plus underwater. They really kind of seem like they're just crossing IP. Or I could be French.
Okay,
fries.
so Mickey, I know that you're having a great time in postmodern land there.
Yeah.
But Scroggins is, I think we're now taking down to about 15 minutes to get this podcast started. So can I just I'll just throw in I'm just Mickey's our tech guy here. Scroggins is our real working man. I've got my Drew Brees jersey on, so I'm pretending to play quarterback here. I'm Will Sampson. We've got I'm a Catholic convert truck driver. We've got Mr. Matt Scroggins over here. He's a former Presbyterian and then Pentecostal. And then atheist pedicab driver, which is how I met him when we were all kind of lost in liberal nonsense land. And then now Scroggins is getting his Ironworker book. So I used to be trying to be a starving artist filmmaker, and I got over it. So me and Scroggins are trying to be real men. And then Mickey over here, it was also Mickey's a strange mix of Protestant and Catholic, and also I don't know where like atheism. I'm going to turn it over to you all to respond to all these things. But Mickey, I met Mickey in liberal arts. We went to Tulane University, and I was a philosophy and film studies major. Mickey was an archaeology major. We were members of an elite student group called the Juggling Club. And we juggled and gardened and fixed bicycles. There we go. That proves that he has some education. And then Mickey is the most successful liberal arts friend that I have, in that he actually has a job using liberal arts skills.
The most successful ones are lawyers.
Well, I guess that is true. Yeah. Okay. So maybe there's I know one of those. But Mickey, you're the second most successful in that you're actually using your liberal arts talents to create spam mail.
Mm-hmm.
And I that's my and this is a podcast in search of God, or maybe God is in search of us. So that's my introduction. Scroggins will have to go here soon. We've had many technical difficulties getting this started, but so this is our introduction. Scroggins, how would you? I probably didn't do a good job. How would you introduce yourself to this supposedly Christian podcast?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's probably an accurate. There's a lot of granular detail, but I think that's accurate. I guess with me, the position I find myself in, I'm not so much. I'm not in Will's camp, where Will is, going deep into Catholicism. I had a phase like that where not Catholicism, but I guess just Christianity, reading the Bible. Was raised in a Presbyterian private Christian school in central Alabama. Because I was reading the Bible directly, that led me to some, interesting conclusions that kind of led to me shifting towards Pentecostalism. And then I read The God Delusion in 2008 or 9, something like that. Maybe it was 2007. Somewhere between there. No, it would have been 2006 or 7. 8 or 9, I had kind of abandoned Christianity in the church. I read that, made me come to some conclusions that I wasn't sure that I could be totally sure about, like God being real. Abandoned religion for a long time. Dealt with a lot of social isolation as a result of growing up in like a, cloistered off culture, which got better. And now I'm kind of in a spot where maybe it's as a result of some of my political beliefs. I think that not necessarily Christianity, but having a religious background is a important aspect of basically how people have built themselves culturally and perpetuated themselves, and people have perpetuated themselves as a species throughout time. And we're in a position where if you don't channel that religious impulse towards some kind of a belief system, typically a religion, you end up worshiping the state, and that ends in totalitarianism and death. So I'm much warmer to Christianity and really just all of the Abrahamic religions, because I think while they have some abuses, kind of are better than the godless alternatives. So I have interesting musings about it. I think it's why I enjoy talking about these things, particularly with these two individuals. And I've got a touch of the tism, so you'll be seeing a little bit of that here and there as this podcast continues and perpetuates.
Thank you, Scroggins.
Good
Yes, exactly.
intro.
Yeah, no, I think Will gave us a nice little primer, and I guess as far as this being I feel like this is the alpha episode. There's probably going to be one more beta, and then there'll be episode 1. But for the alpha,
Beta.
we have to be beta before we can be alpha. But I guess this is like the digital production schedule, because as Will mentioned, I'm a spam man. I'm also a data guy. All that is irregardless of what we really enjoy talking about, which is how our world is changing. And a lot of it has to do with what I do, but we are just the petty merchants trying to catch a deal. But really, though, like talking about if this is a podcast about God, I had a, very sort of, I feel like the most suburban possible experience with religion ever, where I had no real concept of church stuff because my parents were too busy raising kids. And then they had a tension moment, and my dad became religious and my mom never really cared. And I did a little bit of the old confirmation. I got confirmed in Lutheran, the Missouri Synod Lutheran Church, a church that later became a mega church. in that tacky, like branded way where they had to like, rename themselves the Torchlight. I'm just going to use that. I'm not going to say their actual name because my dad was actually the president of the board of directors or whatever at one point. But regardless of all that, I started reading, philosophy in like 10th or 11th grade, and really very quickly it was like, oh, that was a bunch of nonsense. And I'd always kind of had that in the back of my mind. So I came from like a cynical rejection of that system. But when I really think about my beliefs, and like I have this amazing, funny friend who was the first alcoholic I ever met. He was like 26, and I was a 16-year-old server at Steak and Shake, a nice diner. And he was trying to write a great like post-apocalyptic story. He might be a great writer. I honestly hope he's doing well, but he also was very unhappy when he wasn't drinking at the end of the night. But either way, he told me that he was a left-leaning anarcho-capitalist. And I thought that was a great thing to think at 16 years old. And really, I feel very like fondly towards the libertarian instincts, especially during the George W. Bush era, where the Ron Paul movement was like a very obvious way out of this nonsense. And I feel like I'm not necessarily as much a left-leaning anarcho-capitalist as sometimes I throw anarcho-syndicalist, but really I'm just somebody that looks at a lot of the major structures of society, and I'm not happy with it. And I still feel like kind of a benevolent, kind of the democratic socialist viewpoint for a lot of
Mickey,
political issues.
Can I challenge you just on just to elucidate this thing? What is the difference between anarcho-capitalist and anarcho-syndicalist, and what in your mind does that have to do with God? Because I'm sure God has to have something to do with it.
Yeah, well, I was kind of generally rounding out to the point where like I have a very like cynical attitude towards institutionalized religion and how it relates to politics and the power structures, because I think there's just a huge amount of hypocrisy, and we're living in a land of hypocrites and people using anything branded, like being the Christian brand is much more important than actually being somebody that follows the faith and the message and whatnot. And so, yeah, I was just kind of entertaining those silly little political terms that actually I don't think are really irrelevant. But I was kind of my first idea was like saying like at 16 that sounded cool, and now might as well be there, because it's like why would we have any like association with any real like Democratic Party movement or Republican Party movement when I'm very disillusioned about all that. And that relates to my feelings on God. I do find God in my friends, and like being in amazing moments of jubilee, and that's always been my connection with that. And so I'm still on the fence about whether or not I want to call myself a Christian, but I would definitely adhere to a lot of those awesome values. And I'm kind of in the historical Jesus mindset still. Like I really think what we know, should only be really focused on that amazing story and the sacrifice. And my two always things are, he flipped the tables and he said, "Fuck you" to the Roman Empire. So.
But he also said that he was the Son of God many times.
That's something my dad and I always have debates on, Will.
And now, a quick word from our sponsors. This episode is brought to you by Opposable Thumbs. Opposable Thumbs can be used to pick things up and manipulate the material world. If you have trouble playing bar chords on a guitar, you can use your opposable thumbs to wrap around the neck. You could even use your opposable thumbs to tune your guitar, which I should probably do. You could also use your opposable thumbs to express your approval or disapproval. You might want to try it on this podcast episode. In the animal kingdom, opposable thumbs are correlated with higher intelligence. Not all creatures are blessed with opposable thumbs. So we encourage you to appreciate your opposable thumbs today. Now back to some more fresh and fabulous content.
Jesus was like a carpenter, just like a guy from the middle of nowhere. And the main witnesses about him were like fishermen. You know, they weren't like they weren't, you know, big people, and somehow a bunch of fishermen got their message across 2,000 years of time that we're like talking about it now.
Yeah, a few things. Yeah, the realness. I feel like you're kind of leading into a binary, Will, which it's like, you know, I'm not saying that God is a queer spectrum or something, but like, you know, in some ways maybe it, you know, like the actual like solidity of that belief doesn't have to necessarily be one or the other, you know.
Are you saying God is queer?
Jesus is queer.
That's exactly what he's saying. It's Pride Month, y'all. Jesus is gay.
It's Pride Month.
We got to get it all right.
But no, there's a lot of, you know, again, I've definitely heard a lot of people say like, the fact that we're still talking about him, you know, that's again a great testament to the success of his message, I would say. But and that does that transcend into a God level, maybe. But what about like Gilgamesh? Gilgamesh was the first hero, 4,000 BC. He's in like North Africa. He's in Afghanistan. He's like a dude who's like the ultimate like first super like hero, the Hercules of his day, of, you know, the you know, society or whatever that is, the Uruk society or whatever. I forget. I'm not as savvy with my old terms, but you know, like, and then people, I'm not going to go directly to that old classic loose change argument that Jesus is just a reflection of all these other figures. I guess what I'm trying to say is like people have, you know,
I think it means zeitgeist, not loose change, right?
Oh yeah. Maybe I mean zeitgeist. That's right. But either way, I'm not trying to say that entirely, but I really do think that the effective institutions have sustained Christianity after it defeated the Roman Empire for its good message. You know, so it got through the first thing, and then the Byzantines maintained it up until, you know, Constantinople fell. But then that was like, and then it had its own different iteration in Western Europe. And the Catholic, you know, it's like it's a beautifully like evolved and interesting thing that's core around Jesus. So does that make him a god in many ways? Yeah.
Well, okay. And so
do I get the spooky supernatural feeling that I think I was told as a kid to feel? No, I really don't. Yeah.
Well, okay. So I would point out, Mickey, you were talking about the historical Jesus, which is that we took a class in college on the historical Jesus, and then you brought up Gilgamesh, which is a very different type of history. I mean, that's I think people could argue it's history. And I'll just point out, you know, you're talking about superheroes, but you know, Jesus is a superhero who's talking about like taxes and like changing money and like taking care of the poor, and then like rises from the dead and flies up into the sky, which is some like pretty superhero, you know, type of thing to do. Yeah. But anyway,
it's not the most important part. But
so I think that there's like, I think that it's just, I wonder, like, are we talking about history or superheroes or whatnot? So Scroggins, I know that you are an expert on superheroes.
I don't know,
right?
Nerd, comic book nerd.
In terms of comic book. Can I say when I first met you, man, I had this feeling, because when we first met, we were both in kind of the dregs of where I don't know, we were trying to find ourselves, I guess, whatever, and I was doing that with like wanting to have a career in filmmaking or whatnot, and you were, I feel like, kind of you had come to the atheism, and it seemed to me when I first met you that you had kind of replaced your interest in Christianity or whatnot with an interest in comic books.
That's going to take me a long time to think about, so I probably can't do that.
Sorry, y'all. Maybe I'm trying too hard to lead the conversation. What do you think about everything?
Was Jesus a superhero?
Oh, of course he was a superhero. I think I probably agree with Mickey about the historical Jesus in terms of, if you think of him as a mythological, I mean, I guess like you will probably think about this as all like totally true. I mean, there's probably some thoughts about like the Old Testament where some stuff could be maybe interpreted a little bit more loosely, particularly like Genesis. But So you probably think about it that way. I think the efficacy of these things is the impact and the way in which people live their lives in relation to it. I know Christians who use Christianity. There's a guy I work with right now who I was talking to a coworker about this. He kind of uses Christianity like, oh, I'm a Christian, whatever, to like not do a good job and to excuse a lot of his bad behavior. It's like, oh, I'm a Christian, so I'm okay that I do these bad things. And it's like, well, that's not cool. But then it's like, I know a lot of people who are Christians who are really deep into it, and they're actually like really decent and good people. I mean, and like, you know, I think me and Mickey would kind of say this, and we've talked about this on the way to your wedding, but it's like, you know, you turning Catholic, like there's been like a noticeable improvement in your mental health and your quality of life. You seem a lot more at peace about a lot of things. So, I mean, I think that's kind of, it's anecdotal, but I don't know that I have like a really good philosophical or scientific, you know, position on it, but it's like, I do know people who they do these religious practices and their quality of life improves and they're like better to the people around them. And I think it's because there's, I mean, all like, you know, I'd say particularly with me, it's the Abrahamic religions, so Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. I think there's a lot of good teachings in them. They're strict about certain things, and they can be, all of them can be unforgiving. Not saying they don't forgive people or something like that, but I just mean there's like a standard you have to live up to if you're going to be an adherent to those religions. And it's kind of the fact that there are just rules. And there's things that you have to abide by and you have to do because that's, according to those different perspectives, the right thing to do. I think that there's a lot of efficacy in that, and it's a good thing for holding society together, particularly in the United States, because we're a nation of a lot of you know, immigrants, different peoples. We're not one people. We're a bunch of different peoples with lots of different cultural backgrounds. So having, you know, these religions that kind of tie communities together is a way of having similarity when there's not really a lot of that culturally nowadays. So I'd say that's kind of one of the things that kind of holds this together. Yeah, I guess that is kind of like my perspective on it.
Yeah. I think that there's a lot to talk about there. I think about what you're saying, Scroggins, about just the religion or a shared belief being the glue, that it's just like the common ground. If we can all agree on one common ground, then we can disagree. Then we can all be free to be our own individual selves, as long as we like agree on this core thing. And then, Mickey, I think about something that you said about the like brand of Christianity in our times. I feel like there's this thing in our society that there's people are kind of implicitly Christian in our world, and that they I think most people in our society agree that it's good to be kind, it's good to help poor people, it's good to love your neighbor. I guess that's being kind, and it's also good to not worry. It's good to consider the ravens and like try and be a good person. But that's all just taken as like normal. That's just assumed. And people don't associate those values with Christianity anymore, which is, or I guess I should say, deeper than Christianity, Abrahamic religions. Whereas if we flash back to Rome or ancient Greece, like there might be a very different value structure there. And then, Mickey, this thing you said about branding, I completely feel you on this thing. That I grew up just vaguely kind of thinking that wouldn't it be nice if this Christianity thing was real? But like the Christianity that I saw was generally like, you know, my parents would sometimes take me to church, not that they really believe in it, but it's just a bunch of kind of old people who all seem kind of bored and not really taking it seriously, and it all seems a little bit fake. And then there's like people in the town square shouting at you. You know, we all bonded by living in New Orleans, and this can be seen in its most absurd degree on Bourbon Street in New Orleans, where there's, you know, like supposed Christians like in the middle of Bourbon Street shouting like, "You better get on your belly and crawl like a reptile." And like, I'm sure in their mind they have some math they're doing in their mind that they're like somehow saving souls or something. But clearly, I think obviously that person just wants to be on Bourbon Street. I think just wants to be a part of the action, but they can't like admit that to themselves. So they have to be like screaming about reptiles, or which vaguely might have something to do with Satan or something, you know. Just like Mickey, I agree with you on this. The branding of Christianity has become so. We commonly, everybody assumes that we all know who Jesus is and who the people who follow Jesus are without needing to talk about it, because it's just kind of awkward.
Yeah. I mean,
It's so lame.
If you think about like, who have you heard about, like, who are the great donors of the last, you know, few decades even? It's like, oh, did you hear Bill Gates is donating all his money to, you know, vaccine research or whatever? Did you hear, you know, like a bunch of these tech guys, you know, signed with it? It's like, I mean, I guess what I'm trying to say is like the sort of the atheists and the liberals have sort of been the most flashy about like, let's create a foundation for, you know, these people. But, you know, for most of this, you know, like American history, it was these great like religious foundations creating charity hospitals and things like that. And I feel like there's a disconnect of like these great sort of like charitable influences at like on a scale that you see. And of course, there's obviously like, you know, really good churches that do things, but on a scale level, you hear more about like, oh, they did a great thing in their little, like, very rich white community in suburbia, you know.
Or like one thing that I find in America, I mean, people who, you know, go around calling themselves Christians, most of those mega churches, what are they doing? They're going to Africa and South America to like give people glasses,
vacation time,
or give people condoms. You know, like George Bush. You know, I don't think he really cared much about Jesus very much, but he certainly wanted to get that vote. You know, George Bush like contributed the most money out of any president to charities in Africa, and he donated it all to abstinence campaigns, which like I am Catholic. I do think it's good for people to be chaste, but we know that Americans from the Northeast who pretend that they're Texans, who are then trying to like send money to at Africa to do, like, that doesn't work. It's a waste of money, and what it is it's a show to appear that we're being righteous without actually being righteous.
And it almost certainly increased the rate of HIV.
You're right. And what I want to point out with that is that, you know, there's so much energy, you know, supposedly Christian energy towards doing all that, you know, good works. And look at the streets of America right now. There are so many homeless people who are like scary homeless people. There's so much opportunity to help your neighbor, the person who is hurting next, like very close to you. But this is what I see in a lot of this type of Christianity that we're talking about. I mean, but that it's an urge to, there is a Christian urge to, you know, be a good person and save your soul, but not in your neighborhood. Like you don't want to actually like have to look people in the eye. You just want to send money to like Africa or some faraway place, you know?
Yeah.
Hey guys, I wish I could keep going, but I really got to go take care of stuff.
I just lowered it.
I appreciate it. Thank you. Mickey's like, hey, STFU, okay, stop. All right.
I see you holding your hand up.
I would love to really talk about the in greater depth, maybe like take a whole episode and focus on like Christianity in terms of branding. And then I think also talk about charity in relation to Christianity, because those are both important aspects of Christianity in the modern world. But I got to go. It was a pleasure getting with you guys finally. And let's keep it going. So love you guys. Y'all have a good rest of your night, okay?
Thanks for tuning in, Scroggins, and it was a pleasure hanging out with you last weekend.
Yeah, it was good hanging with you guys tonight too on video. I know it's not as great as in person, but it's good to.
Yeah.
After working on my car all day, it was fun. So thank you guys.
I need to figure out a better, closer way. Your guys' heads are bigger than mine. Either way.
That's not true, Mickey. Your head's bigger than mine.
I can sometimes be big-headed, but you're thick-headed at least, Scroggins.
Oh, thank you.
That's so nice.
All right. Love you guys. Peace.
Love you too, bro. Thanks for tuning in.